The music world is numb today, stunned by the violent death of gangster rapper Notorious B.I.G. The tragedy happened here outside of the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles.
Do you remember when the world saw Biggie's last ride through Brooklyn? Now, new footage of his body inside the funeral home changes everything we were told. What the camera captured wasn't a final goodbye. It was a secret, one that could finally expose what really happened in those dark, final hours. The secret in the casket. The clip is short, maybe 10 seconds. It is grainy and the light is low, but it is him. Christopher Wallace. He is laid out in a casket. This is not just any casket. It is a massive 3x wide casket, specially ordered for his size. He weighed nearly 400 pounds when he died. In the footage, he is dressed in a white tuxedo and a white top hat. This is exactly what his family requested. This footage should not exist. The official story always ended with cremation. The world was told his body was turned to ash right after his funeral. But this clip shows a viewing, a secret one. This proves that before his body was destroyed, a small group of people saw him one last time. Who filmed this and why? To understand why this footage is so explosive, you have to understand the man in the casket. And you have to understand the world that was trying to kill him. Brooklyn's son, Christopher George Latore Wallace, was born on May 21st, 1972. He was the only child of Valletta Wallace. His father, a Jamaican politician, left when he was just 2 years old. So it was just him and his mother. They lived in a small apartment, 226 St. James Place in Brooklyn. The neighborhood was Bedford-Stuyvesant. His mother was a preschool teacher. She worked hard to protect him. She sent him to a good school. He was a smart kid. He did very well in his classes, but his mother said he was also a smartass. Outside their door, the crack epidemic was exploding in the 1980s. The streets were a different kind of school. He saw the hustlers, he saw the quick cash, and he wanted in. By the time he was a teenager, he was living two lives. He was a good student by day, but he was learning to sell drugs by night. The streets were calling him. At age 17, he made a choice. He dropped out of high school. His mother was crushed. He was now a full-time drug dealer, but he had another skill, a secret talent. He loved to rap. He would stand on the street corners and battle other rappers. He was just doing it for fun. He had a unique, smooth flow. His rhymes told stories. They were stories about the life he was living, the hard life. His friends knew he was special. One of his friends, Damian D-Rock Butler, convinced him to make a demo tape. It was just a simple tape, but it was everything. That tape got passed to a DJ named Mr. C. Mr. C was Big Daddy Kane's DJ. He heard it and knew it was different. He passed the tape to a man named Matty C at The Source magazine. The Source was the biggest magazine in hip-hop. They had a column called Unsigned Hype. Biggie's demo tape was so good, he was featured in that column, and a young A&R man at Uptown Records read that column. His name was Sean Puffy Combs. Puffy had to meet this kid from Brooklyn. He tracked Biggie down. He brought him to a famous soul food restaurant in Harlem called Sylvia's. Puffy later told the story of that first meeting. He said he was shocked at how big and black Biggie was. This was a time of pretty boy artists. Biggie was the opposite. He was quiet. He just sat there. Puffy asked him if he wanted to eat. This was the best soul food in the world. Biggie said no. He was too nervous. He couldn't even eat. Puffy said he realized this was Biggie's dream. It was all coming true. Puffy signed him to Uptown Records, but then Puffy was suddenly fired. Biggie's dream almost ended right there, but Puffy made a boss move. He started his own label. He called it Bad Boy Records, and Christopher Wallace was his very first artist. It was a move built on loyalty. The King of New York. In 1994, they released his first album, Ready to Die. The album was a masterpiece. It changed everything. It was a dark, autobiographical story of his life as a criminal, but it also had huge radio hits like Juicy and Big Papa. It was the first time an artist had been so raw and so commercial at the same time. The album was a huge success. It saved East Coast hip-hop, which had been losing to the West Coast. Biggie was crowned the King of New York. He was only 21 years old. At the same time, he had a friend, a man who was already a global superstar, Tupac Shakur. Tupac was the face of the West Coast, but he was born in Harlem. He and Biggie were friends at first. They respected each other. But that all changed in November 1994. Tupac was at a recording studio in New York called Quad Studios. He was robbed and shot 5 times. He survived. Biggie and Puffy were in the same building at the time. Tupac believed they set him up. He thought they knew about the attack and did nothing. The friendship was not just broken, it was destroyed. Tupac went to prison for a different crime. While inside, his anger grew. He was bailed out by the most feared man in hip-hop, Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records. Now Tupac was a soldier for the West Coast. He released a song called Hit 'Em Up. It was the most brutal diss track in history. In it, he threatened Biggie's life. He also claimed he slept with Biggie's wife, the singer Faith Evans. The East Coast-West Coast feud was now a real war. In September 1996, the war had its first victim. Tupac Shakur was shot and killed in a drive-by in Las Vegas. Suddenly, all eyes turned to Biggie. In the eyes of the West Coast, he was now the #1 suspect. This is the world Christopher Wallace flew into just 6 months later. This is why he was in enemy territory. Enemy territory. He arrived in Los Angeles in early 1997. He was there to promote his second album, a double album he called Life After Death. He was also there to film the music video for his new single Hypnotize, but he told people he was also there to make peace. After Tupac's death, he said the war had to stop. He was a father now. He had survived a bad car accident that left him walking with a cane. His whole view on life was different, but Los Angeles did not want peace. On March 7, 1997, Biggie went to the Soul Train Music Awards. He was there to present an award to Toni Braxton. When he walked on stage, the crowd was split. Some people cheered, but a large part of the crowd booed him. He was publicly disrespected. It was a clear and loud message. He was not safe. He was a long way from Brooklyn. The next night was March 8th. Biggie was supposed to fly to Europe for a tour, but the trip was canceled at the last minute. He was itching to get out of his hotel. He and his crew decided to go to an after party. It was hosted by Vibe Magazine and Quest Records. It was held at the Peterson Automotive Museum in the Miracle Mile district. For a few hours, things seemed fine. The party was packed, but just after midnight, the fire department showed up and shut the party down. It was too crowded. It was time to go. Biggie and his crew left the museum. They got into a 3-car convoy. Puffy was in the first car. Biggie was in the second car, a green GMC Suburban. He was in the front passenger seat. This is a key detail. His driver, Gregory G. Money Young, was at the wheel. His childhood friend, Lil Cease, was in the back seat. At about 12:45 a.m., they stopped at a red light. They were at the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue. They were only 50 yards from the museum. The street was crowded with people leaving the party. That is when it happened. The end of the story. A dark-colored 1994 Chevrolet Impala SS pulled up slowly. It did not speed by. It stopped. It stopped right next to Biggie's door. Lil Cease, in the back seat, saw the driver. He was a black man. He was wearing a light blue suit and a bow tie. This detail is the most important part of the story. The man in the bow tie made eye contact with Biggie. He then drew a 9mm pistol. He fired 6 shots into the green Suburban. The sound of the gunfire echoed through the street. 4 of those bullets hit Biggie. The Impala then sped off into the night. Puffy, in the car ahead, heard the shots. He jumped out of his car and ran back. He raced across the street to his friend's car. He found Biggie hunched over, bleeding. The crew did not wait for an ambulance. They knew they had to get him to a hospital. Now, they floored it. They drove to the nearby Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. It was only a few blocks away. When they got there, panic set in. Biggie was a huge man. He was almost 400 pounds. Witnesses said it took 6 people to lift his body out of the car and onto a gurney. Doctors rushed him into the emergency room. They performed an emergency thoracotomy. This means they cut open his chest. They were trying to find the wounds and stop the bleeding. They were trying to save his life. His estranged wife, Faith Evans, got a call. She was in a nearby hotel. She rushed to the hospital. She was told they were trying to revive him, but it was too late. The damage was too much. At 1:15 a.m. on March 9, 1997, Christopher Wallace was pronounced dead. He was 24 years old. The King of New York was gone. But what the bullets did to his body was a secret. What the bullets did? For 15 years, the full autopsy report was sealed by the police. No one knew the exact details. The police said it was to protect the investigation. Then, in December 2012, the report was released. The 23-page report told the true story of what happened to his body. The toxicology report was clear. There were no drugs or alcohol in his system. He was completely sober. The bullets told a different story. He was hit 4 times. But here's the chilling part. 3 of those shots were not fatal. The first bullet hit his left forearm and traveled down to his wrist. The second bullet hit him in the back, but it missed all his vital organs. It went out his left shoulder. The third bullet hit his outer left thigh and exited through his inner thigh. The report notes this third bullet caused a very shallow cut to his scrotum. 3 bullets. And he could have survived, but there was a 4th bullet. This was the one. This was the bullet that killed him. The report shows this single bullet entered through Biggie's right hip. It did not stop. It was a fatal blow. The bullet tore through his colon. Then it pierced his liver. Then it ripped through his heart. Then it went through the upper part of his left lung. The bullet did not exit. It finally stopped in his left shoulder area. 1 bullet had destroyed his body from the inside out. This is the body that was flown from the Los Angeles coroner's office back to New York. This is the body that is in the new footage. How do you prepare a body with that much damage for a viewing? The secret viewing. The family wanted privacy. They sent his body to the most famous and most private funeral home in New York City, the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Chapel on Madison Avenue. This is not a normal funeral home. This is where legends are taken. John Lennon, Jacqueline Kennedy, Onassis, Judy Garland. Their entire business is built on one thing: secrecy. They handle celebrity funerals. They stop photographers. They protect the families. An embalmer from the home, Gene Schultz, later gave an account of his work. He confirmed the casket. It had to be a 3X casket, extra wide because of Biggie's size. He also confirmed what the new footage shows. The family requested Biggie be dressed in a double-breasted white suit and a white top hat. The funeral home prepared the body. They used all their skills to cover the wounds. They made him ready for one last secret viewing. The private service was held on March 18, 1997. More than 350 mourners packed into the chapel. The biggest names in music and entertainment were there: Queen Latifah, Flavor Flav, Busta Rhymes, Mary J. Blige, Lil Kim, Run DMC, and David Dinkins, the former mayor of New York. This was supposed to be a private, dignified event, but accounts from inside show it was anything but calm. The room was filled with grief and with complicated feelings. Biggie's wife, Faith Evans, stood up to sing. She sang the gospel song, "Walk With Me, Lord." But she was not the only woman there who loved him. Charlie Baltimore, who was also in a relationship with Biggie, was sitting in the back. She described what happened next. As Faith was singing, Lil Kim became overcome with grief. She was his protege and his lover, but she did not just cry. Charlie Baltimore said in an interview that Lil Kim stopped, dropped, and rolled on the chapel floor. She was rolling up and down the aisle. It was chaos. All the attention in this tiny private room was on her. In a place built for extreme privacy, this was the moment all security was broken. This was the moment all eyes were turned away. Was this when someone, in the confusion, lifted a camera? Was this when the new footage was filmed? It had to be, because what happened next was the end of the private part of the day, the last ride. After the service, the doors of the chapel opened. The 3X casket was loaded into a black hearse. It was time for Biggie's last ride. The funeral procession drove from the rich streets of Manhattan to his old neighborhood in Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant. The streets were filled. Thousands of people packed the sidewalks to say goodbye. This was not a sad, quiet crowd. This was a celebration. They played his music from open windows. They held up pictures. They climbed on top of cars. They cheered for their king. The crowd grew so large and so emotional that scuffles broke out. People were climbing on cars and blocking the hearse. Police had to use pepper spray to control the crowd. 9 people were arrested. It was a chaotic public goodbye. But after this public display, the story was supposed to end. The hearse drove to the Fresh Pond Crematory in Queens. The official report is simple. Christopher Wallace was cremated. His ashes were given to his family. The body was gone. This is why the new footage changes everything. It proves there was a viewing. It proves his body was not immediately cremated. If the body is gone, the story should be over. So, why are we still talking about it? The unsolved mystery. Because the murder was never solved. It remains one of the most high-profile unsolved murders in American history. But one LAPD detective believed he found the answer. His name was Russell Poole. Poole was the lead detective on the case, and his investigation did not lead him to a random gang member. It led him inside his own police department. Detective Poole claimed that a fellow LAPD officer, David Mack, was involved in the murder. Poole said he had evidence that Mack had deep ties to Suge Knight and Death Row Records. He claimed Mack was a member of the Bloods gang, just like Suge. Mack even wore the same red clothes as Knight and the gang. And what about the man in the blue suit and bow tie? Poole's investigation named a suspect, a friend of David Mack named Amir Muhammad. This man fit the description perfectly. Poole's theory was explosive. Suge Knight had hired corrupt LAPD officers to kill Biggie. Detective Poole took all his findings to the chief of the LAPD, Bernard Parks. He told him he believed an LAPD officer helped kill Biggie. What did the chief do? He ordered Russell Poole to stop investigating David Mack. He shut the investigation down. In protest, Detective Russell Poole resigned from the force. He could not be part of a cover-up. This story is backed up by Diddy's own bodyguard, Gene Deal. He was there that night. Deal has said for years, this was not a drive-by. He calls it a calculated setup. He believes the shooter was parked and waiting for Biggie's car. If the police were involved, the story is much darker than anyone knew. The prophecy. But the darkest part, the part that feels like a prophecy, comes from Biggie himself. He seemed to know what was coming. Remember his album, Life After Death? The photos for that album were taken on January 24th, 1997, just weeks before he was killed. Do you know where the photo shoot took place? A cemetery, the Cypress Hills Cemetery in Brooklyn. The photos are now famous. They are chilling to look at. They show Biggie, dressed in a black suit, standing next to a black hearse. He is leaning on his cane. He was still healing from his car accident. The photographer, Michael Levine, even changed the license plate on the hearse. It was changed to read Big. He was posing for pictures with his own hearse in a graveyard for an album called Life After Death. He was killed on March 9th. That album was released 16 days later, on March 25th, 1997. And what is the very last song on that double album? The last words he left for the world? A track called You're Nobody Till Somebody Kills You. Biggie's friend, Lance Rivera, told the story of that song. He said the title came to him in a dream he had right after Tupac was killed. He told Biggie the line, and Biggie wrote the song. It was meant to be a tribute to his fallen friend. It ended up being his own epilogue. The official story says the ashes were scattered. The unsolved case points to a cover-up. And the new footage shows a secret viewing that was never supposed to happen. We are left with one question. If the world saw his final ride, who filmed his final secret?